You're trapped in the corner of a room, holding a lukewarm drink, forcing a painfully fake smile, while someone you barely know gives you a play-by-play of their morning commute. And deep down, you can physically feel your energy draining away, second by excruciating second. You probably think you're just socially awkward, or maybe just a hardcore introvert. But you're wrong. Your brain isn't broken. It's actually violently rejecting a cognitive process that evolutionary psychologists call social grooming. What you're experiencing in those painfully awkward silences isn't just boredom. It's a measurable spike in cognitive load. Small talk literally forces your brain to work overtime while starving it of the dopamine it actually needs to stay engaged. But here's the crazy part. The people who seem to effortlessly glide through these superficial chats aren't necessarily more social or extroverted than you. They are just exploiting a psychological loophole that you don't know about yet. There is a very specific, scientifically backed reason why you instinctively crave deep, meaningful conversations, and a hidden psychological trigger you can use to bypass the "how's the weather" script and instantly shift any interaction into a conversation you actually want to have. But to unlock that, you first have to understand what idle chatter is secretly doing to your nervous system. Every time somebody corners you to talk about the weather, the traffic, or what they had for lunch, your brain enters a state of hypervigilance. You aren't just listening, you're performing. You are actively monitoring your facial expressions, calculating the exact right amount of eye contact so you don't look creepy, and desperately scanning your brain for a socially acceptable response that isn't just, "I literally do not care." Psychologists call this surface acting. It's the exact same emotional labor required of a customer service worker dealing with a difficult client, and it consumes a massive amount of glucose in your prefrontal cortex. You are burning actual, physical energy to suppress your genuine lack of interest and simulate polite engagement. This is why a 10-minute chat by the office coffee maker can leave you feeling like you just ran a mental marathon. And to make matters worse, while your brain is burning premium fuel to keep up this performance, it is getting absolutely zero reward. Meaningful conversations, the ones where you discuss ideas, passions, or shared human struggles, trigger a powerful release of dopamine and oxytocin. These neurochemicals actually give you energy. They make you feel alive, secure, and connected. Small talk provides none of that. It is a neurological dead zone. You are spending maximum cognitive currency for zero chemical payoff. That feeling of hollow exhaustion when you walk away from a superficial chat isn't a personality flaw. It's a literal neurochemical deficit. But the tragedy is, you blame yourself. You think your social battery is just defective. You label yourself as antisocial, or assume you have crippling social anxiety. You start avoiding networking events, making excuses to skip parties, and hiding in your car until the exact minute a meeting starts, all because you are terrified of getting trapped in a conversation loop about absolutely nothing. You've convinced yourself that you are fundamentally bad at connecting with people. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is the script itself? We are all taught that small talk is the mandatory stepping stone to building relationships. We believe we have to trade empty pleasantries to prove we are friendly before we are allowed to get to the good stuff. But here is the truth that completely shatters that illusion. Small talk was never designed to build connection. From an evolutionary standpoint, early humans didn't exchange meaningless vocalizations to become friends. They did it to figure out if the primate standing in front of them was going to attack them. Small talk is not an exchange of information. It is a biological threat assessment. Think about it. When a coworker asks, "How was your weekend?" they don't actually care if you mowed your lawn or went to the grocery store. They are subconsciously pinging your nervous system. Are you predictable? Are you a part of the tribe? Are you safe? You respond with, "Good, you?" to signal that you aren't a threat. It's a biological handshake. But here is where the system completely breaks down. Our ancestors did this for 3 seconds before moving on to actual survival. Modern society forces us to stay in this primal threat assessment phase for 10 agonizing minutes at a time. You aren't building a relationship. You are just repeating "I am not a threat" over and over again in different variations. No wonder you're exhausted. But what if you could hack this primitive radar? You absolutely can. The people who effortlessly navigate social events aren't engaging in more small talk. They are actively destroying it. They use a psychological mechanism called a pattern interrupt. During small talk, the brain operates on a rigid autopilot to conserve energy. When someone asks a script question, they expect a script answer. If you give them one, you both stay trapped in the dead zone. So, you have to break the script. If someone asks, "How's your Tuesday going?" the autopilot answer is, "Not bad, just busy. It's boring. It's a dead end." Instead, a pattern interrupt jolts their brain awake. You answer, "Honestly, I'm trying to figure out why I thought a third espresso was a good idea." Or, "I just went down a Wikipedia rabbit hole about deep-sea creatures and I'm traumatized." Boom. You just bypass the threat assessment. But why does this instantly change the dynamic? Because you just force their brain out of passive monitoring and into active curiosity. You gave them a novelty spike. The human brain is hardwired to reward novelty with a sudden, sharp hit of dopamine. Suddenly, they aren't talking to a generic NPC anymore. They are talking to a real human being. The social anxiety evaporates because the rigid script is gone. But there is a second, much deeper psychological trigger you need to pull to lock them in. You have to offer a low-stakes vulnerability. When you complain about the traffic or the weather, you are hiding behind a safe, universal topic. When you admit a harmless flaw like being over-caffeinated, totally lost in a podcast, or chronically terrible at remembering names, you drop your armor. Mirror neurons in the other person's brain instantly fire in response. They subconsciously realize, "Oh, we aren't performing right now. It's safe to be real." But how do you keep this momentum going without slipping back into the dreaded awkward silence? You stop asking what and start asking why. Asking, "What do you do for work?" is a massive trap. It forces people to recite their resume. It's just small talk disguised as genuine interest. Instead, you pivot. You ask, "What's the best part of what you do?" Or, "Did you always want to end up in that field?" You shift the conversation from a boring data exchange to an emotional experience. And this is the exact moment the interaction flips. When you ask for an emotion instead of a fact, you give them permission to drop the surface acting. You stop draining their glucose and start feeding their reward centers. You suddenly become the most magnetic person in the room because you are actually giving them energy. But knowing this trick is only half the battle. Because if you push for deep talk too fast, you trigger a completely different psychological defense mechanism. Psychologists call it an intimacy violation. If you suddenly jump from the weather to asking about someone's deepest fears or personal regrets, their amygdala instantly sounds the alarm. You might have bypassed the primitive threat assessment, but now you've become a completely different kind of threat, a boundary crosser. Their brain immediately throws up an emotional firewall, and the conversation crashes. To bridge the gap safely, you have to use a technique called conversational breadcrumbing. You don't drop a heavy existential question right out of the gate. You offer a small, slightly deeper insight and wait to see if they pick it up. If they respond to your joke about being traumatized by deep-sea creatures with a polite but generic chuckle, you stay at that level. But if their eyes light up and they say, "Oh, I do that all the time. I just spent 3 hours reading about the Mariana Trench," they just took the crumb. They just handed you a piece of their authentic self. That is your green light. That is the exact moment the social script shatters permanently. The reason small talk has been draining the life out of you isn't because your social battery is defective, and it certainly isn't because you don't know how to talk to people. It's because you've been trying to survive on psychological junk food when your nervous system was biologically engineered for a Michelin star meal of genuine human connection. You were built to share ideas, to uncover shared struggles, and to experience the profound dopamine rush of actually being understood. When you stop playing the surface acting game, you stop being a victim of the awkward silence. You become the architect of the interaction. You can step into any room, not with the exhausting dread of performing a mind-numbing script, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows exactly how to wake everyone else up. You aren't just protecting your own mental energy anymore. You are giving the people around you the one thing they didn't even know they were desperately craving: the permission to finally be real. But to give them that permission, you need to know exactly which conversational breadcrumbs actually work. In the video on your screen right now, I break down the exact psychological phrases that trigger instant, deep connection. Click it and become the architect.